Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of 12 Monkeys. This season premiere is me talking about all 3 episodes, just to let you know, not just the first episode. And so for this, I will be probably jumping around a bit, but I will try to break it down episode by episode, but I'll probably just kind of mix and match a lot of stuff. So, nevertheless, a great premiere, and I mean great episodes all the way through. Just each episode just amazing. So first of all, the whole situation going down in the facility, it's a shame. What's his name, Lebsky, the scientist, that dude cannot catch a damn break at any point in time. It's like, oh, I'm dead, then I'm not dead again, then I get erased, and then I get unerased, and now I'm dead again. It's like, man, that dude cannot catch a break. Whitley's kind of the same way too, because this is technically the second time Whitley's died, and without changes to the timeline and stuff like that, which is such a shame. Obviously that was kind of pretty badass, like them using Titan to actually shoot the time stream at him, kind of basically doing. Olivia's like, yeah, she learned it from Katarina because of what Katarina did to her last season. Like, that's what she did, so it kind of weaponized it and basically hit the entire facility. Also, Cassie and Cole went badass when they wiped out everyone in that room by themselves. That was pretty damn impressive. And it was kind of this very interesting thing where it's like, basically there was Project Karen, which I'm like, where did that name come from? What was that whole thing about? Basically, she created a way to splinter parts of the facility, not the entire facility. Poor Deacon kind of got left behind in the whole situation, which immediately, like, there was one particular person, like, during the invasion that was working with the Army of the 12 Monkeys, had a black mask, red kind of on it, and arrows. Was that someone special or not? I assumed that was supposed to be something special. Maybe it's just kind of like, oh yeah, that's a gifted general amongst the group. But I feel like, nah, they gave that person too much focus on. Maybe it was just kind of like, hey, they're here to do something special, that's why we're giving a focus. But I feel like that's something or somebody, it's time travel stuff, so you never know if that's someone mixed in pretending to be part of the group. Part of me, for whatever reason, was thinking that was actually Deacon, but from a different time point period, because it seems like, obviously I'm skipping around, but obviously he's working with Olivia, which is kind of a shame. Deacon's constantly bounce back and forth, because at this point in time, he feels like, it's like, why am I working so hard for these people? They left me behind. It's like, it's not their choice. Didn't like they have much of an option in that whole situation. It's kind of like, there's no getting to you. They needed to get out of there before things went shit. But it's like, in Deacon's mind, it's kind of like everything's just kind of been a spiral of crap. It's like the whole Cassie situation. He put forth so much effort for her. Let's not forget he rescued her last season. And it's like, for what? Then there's the whole Ethan situation. Even though they know the truth now, it's still that whole thing. And then there's the whole like Cole thing. It's like, oh, I treated him like a brother. And what happened? He ended up killing his other brother. So it's like, screw them. So he's kind of a warrior. He's going to be their hunter, which I don't know whether that's Deacon playing her just so he can help them out secretly or what. I don't know. It's hard to say with Deacon, because like I said, he bounces back and forth between being good, being bad, kind of just, you don't have to, Jennifer tried to talk to him about it last season, like he doesn't have to, that he is changed. He does care, even though he tries to pretend like he doesn't, so I don't know. Then there's also the thing about, Jones. She's dying from radiation, trying to shut down. When she was messing with the core thing, she ended up getting radiation, which sucks. Which is interesting because like she ended up later on telling Cole like to wait till she shuts the machine down, because she knows what happened to her. Last thing she wants is that to happen to Cole too, so. Which I'm going to be skipping around. I can't help it. It's so good. The fact is they ended back up in 2043. And what I like too is like such little attention to detail, because obviously with time travel, you have to be consistent with your continuity. Is the fact is that even though we were back at the beginning, they kind of at the tail end of their journey to a certain degree, they're back at the beginning. They ended up, not only did they splinter to a different location, which ended up being near the Emerson Hotel, which it's not until I rewatched especially season 2 and 3, that hotel gets a lot of play. I didn't realize that. Maybe because in between time, there was a time between season 2 and 3, so I didn't put it together. Maybe I mentioned it when I was talking about season 3, but I don't remember. But it's like that place is kind of the centerfold for everything. It became the centerfold in season 2, and it continued on in season 3, which I think is so interesting. The stuff later on I'll be talking about is going to circle back to Emerson Hotel even more so, but we'll kind of get to that later. But nevertheless, that was such a neat little thing. But the point I was getting across, like about little aspects, is the fact is, and this is still the aspect of like, oh yeah, 2018. This is the alternate timeline, like. The original timeline that Cole and them remember doesn't exist anymore. So this, even going this far back, it's like, oh yeah, the outbreak started in 2018. Cassie didn't die until then, but we know like originally Cassie died in 2017. There's a whole situation of Dr. Eklund, he was there. But I was like, what? It's like, right. It's like, that's such a good detail, dude. You didn't have to show any of that, but it was really good that they did it. Like I said, the time travel, so you have to be very consistent with that stuff. But I was like, oh, that was so excellently done. Then it's just kind of the whole, them kind of, I like that that also gave them kind of a means to talk to different people. In Joan's case, it's like, she got to talk to Whitley. It's like, she got to apologize, like tell him, like, I don't say it often, but thank you. For what you do and what you're going to do. And even Whit was kind of like, okay, I'll get back and check on Ramsey. I was like, oh, that's kind of a nice little, exchange. I also appreciate that she kind of messed with causality a little bit by talking to herself. I was like, I didn't expect her to do that. But I guess also for one, it's also because of the fact that she is dying. So I guess she's willing to take whatever risk she can, but she's bouncing back and forth because for her biggest regret, it's like, because, I mean, at the end of it all, with this whole situation, the sad thing is the only person that has any hope left is Cole. Everyone else is just giving up. It's like, there's no more fight left. There's nothing more we should do. Just kind of just give up. The mission's over because their machine doesn't work anymore. It's kind of drained out. I did like that moment where Hannah was kind of deciding to walk with him so he didn't have to walk alone. I was like, oh, that's like a little nice thing. It's like mom says, Cole was like, yeah, you're kind of stubborn. And she was like, yeah, mom would probably say the same thing about you. Which is like, I like that because it's like, it kind of shows their relationship as kind of almost being like a brother and sister relationship. Because, it's like Hannah is Katerina's daughter, but she does think of Cole as like a son too. So it's almost kind of playing with that a little bit. I thought was kind of neat. The whole talking to herself thing was so interesting. Kind of like, it's kind of interesting too, because when you think about it, like that was Katerina at her hopefulness, like her at the peak of hope, thinking like, okay, this can be the thing that undoes everything. And it's got to be hard too, listening to yourself say that line of one life for 7 billion. Because like for her, she regrets that so much because it's like in her mind, it's like, oh, thought this was the way, just one more body. And the bodies have stacked up ever since. They've been killing people after killing people, and it's done nothing, and I think that was kind of such a, it's like, it's always that hindsight situation. She looking back, she's like, I wish I'd never said any of that, because it's like, all I'm doing is by making you go, all we're doing by stacking up all these bodies, we're feeding into this loop that we're trapped in. So, but past Katerina, it's very hopeful and, believes in like, oh, it's like, if you don't have any hope, take a little from somebody else, it's kind of like I said, because our Katerina, the one from the future, she like has been beaten down by everything, because for her, it's like every decision she's made kind of led to things playing out the way they did. Obviously, her and Cassie are not on good terms because, like, even Cassie knows that there was a part of her that wanted to let Jones die on the table, but she couldn't do that just because it's like, because once upon a time you called Katerina a friend, plus Hannah's there too, and I'm sure she didn't want to do that in front of like Katerina's daughter. At least that's my mindset about it. So I thought that was kind of like an interesting thing. You had Cole talking to Ramsey, which has got to be the hardest thing ever too, because it's like having to, like, it's like, for him, it's something that his future self had told him last season about, like, hey, you need to forgive yourself for what you're going to do, what you've done, and what you're going to have to do. And so it kind of feeds into that in this particular case too, because the whole Ramsey situation, he's like, I can't forgive myself. It's like, how do we know? This isn't just a one and done, but like Ramsey's like, it'll take as long as it takes. It's like, to do what? It's like, clear your soul. Fact is, there's no good, there's no evil, there's no real right or wrong. It's just what you need to do at this point in time. It's like, that's what's kind of important. Which you get too caught up. It's the whole thing with the situation of time. It's like you think too much of this and that. It's like you do what you feel it's right at this moment in time, and that's what they've always done. Yes, it's never always worked out right, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what they've done, and it's kind of led them on this path. So it's like, is that the right way to think about things? It's a complicated situation, but I do like that. I think Ramsey did kind of spark a little hope inside of Cole by being like, hey, don't worry, dude, you'll you'll make it through. I know you will, and it's, like I said, it's got to be good to see Ramsey again after all this time, but it's at the same time so heartbreaking realizing it's like, yeah, I'm the one who killed you. You're my brother and I killed you, so I mean, I'm sure the argument in his mind especially could be made like, there's no, was it worth it? Was it for anything in the long run? Because in the end, they still ended up losing Ethan anyway, outside of their own control, But also because for him, it's like Ramsey was like, don't undo this, keep this. And maybe it's because things are left that way. Because Ramsey is dead, maybe that will push Cole even more in the future. It'd be part of his motivation, I mean, it's part of what keeps him hopeful now to a certain extent. Yeah, he has his wavering, but even he is hopeful because it's like, we can't let all those sacrifices that have been made be for nothing. And you even had this moment I thought was so interesting where Cassie is walking by Cole's room and watching him watch the reports and stuff like that of her interviewing, in 2018. And then Cassie from back then in 2018 turns and says, Cassie, loops don't just have to mean like kind of an endless loop. It can mean a second chance, meaning that that's Cassie who's been through all of this, that was there talking to Cassie because she knew that in the future she'd be watching. It's like, dude, it's so mind-blowing how stuff like that works. Them sneaking around, Katarina kind of she's like in her mind is like, okay, remember, be a bitch, because that's kind of, she was kind of a hard ass back then, so. The whole tether situation, it's like, oh, she figured it out, but it's like to keep time in check without, creating a paradox or, causality in check. She drank a whole bunch of pills and drank a lot of alcohol to make her feel like it was a dream. So she ended up forgetting the whole meeting in the first place, how everything kind of stays in line. So I thought that was kind of such a nice touch. Easily one of my favorite parts of all of this is the Jennifer bits. That is so good. I was like, oh wow, Jennifer with the red hair. It's like, wow, when did you get stylish and stuff like that? It's like, oh, you're being so I was like, oh, what happened? And part of me was like, oh, she's fighting like that. I was like, oh, in a small amount of time she was with Ethan, he probably trained her or something like that. And it's like, nope. Hard cut to it just being all in Jennifer's head. I was like, that's so good. That's a bit they have not done. They only did it one time last season. I'm so glad that they brought that bit back because it was so beautifully done. Because you could tell she was talking to herself. I was like, hey, how is that? I was like, how does that happen? It's like, right, the other person is her inside her own head and stuff like. I was like, oh, that's so good. And her pretending like she's doing kung fu against the guard and stuff like that, and she just kicks him in the nuts. I'm like, that's so good. I didn't love the guard being like, why do I care? I might as well just let you go because it's like the world is ending out there. So like, who cares? And so I love it because it's basically her imaginary friend. Her power kind of manifested. Like what she needed at the time was kind of another version of her, a more badass, stronger version of herself. And I love when it's all said and done. It's like, oh, looks like you're gonna have to go it alone. And she shows some bullet wounds, and Jennifer's like, wait, you can't die. You're not even real. And it's like the whole situation. I just thought that was so beautifully done. It's this sweet moment, but it's so good. And it's one of the main reasons why I love Jennifer so much, just because it's just wacky and crazy shit like that. It's so good. I even love that she uses a line again of like, I'm dying now. And she waits, oh, no, don't forget your passport. And dies again. It's like, what's up with you saying that, the whole like, I'm dying now thing? I don't get that. Because for Jennifer, it feels like she's also losing her powers too, but maybe it's because this is where she's like, it's meant to kind of, I don't know, maybe she hasn't fully tapped into everything she needs to tap into, or maybe it's just like the voices are going away now because it's like she needs to kind of find her own way first before they come back, it's that whole situation. So, I mean, because the sad situation is when it comes to how this whole thing is going to end, obviously, we're going to discuss that more as the season progresses, but it's like, because obviously it's like, because of loops and everything like that, the whole point of the season is kind of seem like to break loops, but it's like, we know where everyone ends up. We know ultimately where Jennifer dies. We know where Cassie dies, And it's such a small detail I didn't even remember back in season 1 was the fact is her watch got healed. It was me watching. I was like, right. Because if it wasn't healed, like Cole wouldn't be able to scratch it when he gets it from you in 2043 and goes back in time to see you, to prove to you that time travel is real. I was like, I forgot, like that makes a lot more sense, like why it healed itself to kind of fit the continuity of time at the time. So it was just kind of a small thing that was kind of running through my head that I feel like I hadn't thought about. Like, I was wondering about that when I was rewatching season 1, and it's like, oh, now later on, it's like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. Now I'm looking at it retrospectively, you know. So even with all those reminders, she still ended up leaving her passport too. It's like, oh, she kind of calls herself out. She's like, oh, why didn't I listen to you? But a nice detail I like too is we have future Cole, who I guess he calls, everyone's just calling me future asshole, which we have not seen quote unquote future asshole since season 3's first episode. That Cole, this is that Cole, the one that was with Cassie and stuff like that. So we still haven't circled back to that, to him having that conversation with himself about, you know, what he has to basically do. It's so interesting because we're getting cuts back and forth between, it's like, oh, we're seeing who Cole's going to end up being, because even he's like, yeah, he's like, which Cole are you, is what Jennifer asking. It's like, I'm the Cole that I'm the last Cole that I'm most likely will ever be. So it's like, that's end all be all, like end of this season Cole right there. So that's kind of interesting. While all at the same time, we're seeing our Cole, the one that we've been following this entire time, becoming that Cole. Like, I think it's kind of a fascinating thing. I even love Jennifer kind of like trying to fall back into the train, because she knew on some level that Cole would come save her. So I thought that was kind of neat. Even in fact, it's like, oh yeah, the one he's wearing is, I guess it's still damaged. So I'm wondering at what point in time are they going to repair that? Like, obviously they're still using the machine. So I guess those are not easy to mass produce, because like that was only like a heavy season 3 plot. But even then, only a select few of them existed. So I guess there ain't no mass producing, because when we see it later on, it seemed like Cole might be the only one in the future who has one. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see kind of how that all kind of gets to where it is, to the point where like that gets repaired and everything. And even that moment where Katarina was kind of like, oh, when it's all said and done, we have to end this together. You know, it's kind of like, promise me we'll see this today. And once again, not telling anyone that she's sick like she is. Most likely not even telling Hannah. But all the while, you have like Cassie going back in time, because for her, it's like, she's not so worried about going after Jennifer. For her, it's just like she needs revenge against Olivia, because it's like Olivia took their child away from them. She played them all. Like now, like all of this happened because she's the witness. And, you know, it's kind of, and that's kind of what Katarina was talking about. Like, we're literally going down this, we're trying to do this, trying to do that. Started off with Leland, and then went to Ethan, and now Olivia. Is like, we're stacking up these bodies and it does nothing. We're just feeding into the loot. Turns out even more so, but it was kind of fascinating. Olivia, that twist in the 3rd episode, it's kind of like you have Cassie talking to her, being like, no, when it's all said and done, like, you know, you're having a child. I was like, oh my God, what? She's pregnant. I was like, oh, that's crazy. And it's like, oh, she's like, my mom's got, like, it's like, I'm supposed to get pregnant for the witness. I was like, oh, even I'm like, that's weird. Why would you tell yourself to get pregnant? That's okay. But that, it's like Cassie actually had a change of heart, was like, okay, I'm not going to kill you anymore. Because I think as a mother herself and someone's like, because in her eyes, I'm sure she saw Ethan, because it's like Ethan was able to change his future. It's like, if she could change Olivia's future, that could change everything. She never has to become the witness and everything. Kind of put her on the right path. I mean, she had the shoelaces in her hand and everything. So that was going to get ugly. But immediately, but then the twist happens where it's even her mom is like, no, I tried to talk her out of it. I was like, wait, you, the biggest believer? But then it's like, oh, she had her shake in her faith in the witness too, because she got no signs from the witness. Plus there was no red force, much like Olivia, which is interesting. So she tried to tell Olivia not to do it, but Olivia went out on her own to get pregnant because she's that devoted to the witness, which is crazy to think about, considering the fact is that her devotion ended up wavering in season 2, but I guess all that kind of led to her becoming who she is anyway, kind of the cycle and everything. But it's so fascinating. It's like, well, she wasn't like the most heavily devoted person for nothing. I guess it shows even in that young age. I just love, like I said, it's just so beautifully done how it's just making it seem like, oh man, she's trying to escape and everything. Her mom's trying to force this upon her, but it's like her mom actually wanted her to get away from it because she didn't believe in it anymore. And I was like, that's it. But then I was like, but wait a minute. Why would she not believe? I mean, no, this is crazy because the mom doesn't believe anymore. But she tells Tall Man on her deathbed. And I was like, oh my God, because she saw her daughter possessed by the witness. She believes in the witness again because he's talking about the Red Forest. And well, I don't know. I'd assume from the context of the conversation between Olivia and Cassie that she pieced it together, and that's why she was like, oh, my son, you know, start believing again, and said what she said to the Tall Man. I was like, oh my God, that's so good, because of course she'd have her faith restored after all of that. God, that's kind of a shame that, like, it's just like, yeah, Olivia, like you coming after trying to kill Olivia, just played into the cycle even more to the point now it's just kind of like you helped kind of put her in position to be where she needs to be. It's just kind of like it seems almost like there is no winning against this because I love the whole situation of like she's trying to figure it out. It's like, how do I become the witness? I can't really witness anything. But it's like, yeah, you're not primary. That's a whole Ethan situation. That's why some believers kind of lost faith in her because it's like Ethan could see everything because he was the witness. There's even that one dude, the dude from who helped her out last season, being like, maybe you shouldn't have killed Ethan. It's like, oh, we could have even paradoxed him, which I think is kind of an interesting thing because you can make the argument if the showrunner's saying the people behind the show saying this, but it also makes sense storyline wise. It's like, why didn't you paradox him? It's like that already failed us. That whole like the messengers and the paradoxing, it got me to where I need to be. So it still all needs to happen. We need to learn from the past. It's like that wouldn't work anyway. Plus Olivia was super pissed anyway. So I'm sure for her, it's just kind of like, screw that. She was so riled up finding out like, oh, I'm really the witness. I've been worshiping myself the entire time. That whole weird situation. So, but how does she end up making herself into a primary user? She taps herself into the time stream, which is so interesting. I was like, okay, so that's very fascinating. And so basically because of that, she's kind of seen all of time. Like she's kind of seen the beginning and the end, kind of everything. And it seems like we're going back to something else we haven't seen since season 2 with the whole like her consciousness transferring, like how she took possession of Cassie's shoulder, like herself as Aaron, then herself as Cole. Like that's because she was able to kind of hijack Cassie's mind and possess her back in not season 2. I said that. I meant season 3. No. I was right. I was right before. I'm mixing stuff up. I would apologize. It was in fact season 2. But it seems like we're circling back to that because the way she kind of possessed her like past self is almost like drinking the red leaves kind of go into your brain. But obviously like you don't have to do the consciousness because with the consciousness, you kind of like stick with that. But it's like this tapped into the time stream. She can kind of, I guess, go into anybody. In this particular case, she went to herself. Maybe given enough time, she can go to other people. I assume this. This is definitely the system she uses to get inside of Cassie's head in season 2. So I was like, oh man, it's so interesting because that was a one-time thing in season 2. So we'll probably get to see it kind of implemented a lot more. We saw how it came about. Like obviously, it's probably been happening the entire time behind the scenes. Obviously, time travel and stuff. So it's been happening all over the other places. So it probably won't just stop with possessing herself, like I said, because the red leaf would kind of serve that purpose enough, I guess. But then again, that'd be also messing with her timeline because if she changed things by doing that, putting her consciousness, like it wouldn't, like this is kind of it gives you kind of like a reach all for that, like, and once again, you don't have to be limited to just your own timeline. You can mess with other people like that too. So I think that's such a fascinating thing to kind of bring up. It didn't even cross my mind to think that would come back in the way that it did. Like Cassie's protected from it, but who's to say it? No one else is really, potentially could be affected by it. I don't know. We might not see her kind of implement it in that fashion going forward. Maybe we'll, maybe won't. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see though. Then there's the whole thing with the puzzle. Interesting enough, like the artifact that Cole was able to solve it because he remembered a story that his dad told him, which the story came from his mom, which a running theory, and I don't know if that's 100% true at this point in time. Like it's still out there, but it's a theory people had back then during season 3. The one I still see float around is the theory that Jennifer will end up being his mom. I don't think she will be. I think his mom is primary, but I don't think it's Jennifer. Hell, I don't know. I could be 100% wrong about that. But I just kind of get the inkling like it isn't Jennifer. Jennifer isn't mom. Maybe it isn't. There's still always that thought that's kind of always crossed my mind that Cole is actually the origin body. Just because every time Jennifer ever saw it, she was like the eyes. And what does she ever talk about? She talks about Cole's eyes. Not unless it turns out to be Olivia or something like that. I don't know. Like I feel like it has to be someone specific to the story for it to be so significant, the origin of the virus and stuff like that. So my money's always kind of been on Cole, but maybe it's Olivia, maybe it's someone else. I don't know. Cole does have his next mission because inside of that artifact was a date. Which also, like, because apparently this all dates back to the Middle Ages, too, because primaries have existed even back then. There's that whole opening with the knights and stuff like that, which is so fascinating. But we saw someone kind of wearing, like, witness armor. So I assume that's someone going back in time. That might have been, no, because it looked like it was a woman's body just by the shape of the armor. So I don't know if that's her, that's someone else. Because it's interesting things that are kind of brought up in the story that Cole told where it's like, to wield the weapon to defeat the demon, like you would have to kind of become a demon yourself. And I feel like that might be referencing Cassie, because when it's all said and done, after what she's seen, Olivia's kind of like, oh yeah, like you're there with me at the end. So to wield this weapon, like Cassie might have to end up becoming like Olivia or something. I don't know. Or maybe Cole will, and maybe that's what the whole origin body situation is about. Kind of like, I don't know. I mean, to be fair, this is all about breaking loops. So why would you be feeding into? Like I said, I don't know. Like that I'm kind of contradicting things by my thought process. But I don't know. Like I said, we're still early on to a certain degree in this season, so it's definitely going to be interesting seeing what that kind of turns out to be. But getting back to what I was talking about, like the fact is that it's kind of being a Middle Ages thing. Like the dude, that Interpol dude, that took me by surprise because he started bringing up stuff. I was like, oh man, the moment he started getting on Jennifer about like, because even the detective that's with him is like, really? The world is kind of like suffering from this virus and you're worried about some like break-in? She didn't even take something that important. It's like, didn't she? It's like the reason why is because he's meant to protect it. It was meant to go to Cole for this. So, which he ended up solving it. So. Which we also see, you know, obviously being primary doesn't pass down in the family. It's just kind of your chosen, which is interesting because, I mean, we actually think about it. It's like, well, look at Cole and Gassy. Like, Ethan ended up being primary. Potentially his mom is primary. So, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's necessarily like skip a generation type of thing, or it's a genetic thing. It is just kind of like time chooses who it wants to choose. Maybe there is more to it. Maybe there is something in the genetic code that will lead to that. It's never really talked about, and I doubt that at this point in the series they will even really bother with that. I think it'll probably just become like time chooses the people it chooses. So you're either born one, you're either born one or you're not one, you know. So I'm assuming, because from what I've seen from the previews, it does seem like the Middle Ages will play a big role in this. So I'm wondering, is it because it makes you wonder, like, was the battle happening even back then, or is it because stuff from the future happened, leading them to go back in time, leading to the battle being better? I don't know, because there were even people in the mid, like a knight dude being like, oh, you wizard and witches, you primary. So it's like, it seems like this has been a constant thing, but maybe like the future stuff has just come back to kind of influence it all even more. Like maybe even like the Army of the 12 Monkeys is even older than we think it is. I mean, to be fair, Olivia's got access to the time stream. She's kind of seen all of time, seen how all this plays out. So, you know, who's to say she hasn't sent or messed with influence to influence stuff back then? I don't know. I'm also curious about who Olivia's baby's going to be. Like, what? I still don't 100% understand that. She left it in the woods, but that baby, it's meant for future Olivia, not that Olivia. It's like, oh, give birth now so that you can move past all of this, believe so much in the witness, and that will eventually, you know, feed into her cycle and everything to her becoming the witness. But so she can bring in the baby from the future. Like, what's that all going to be? Like, I don't get that. Is that baby going to be someone significant that we know? What is the actual purpose of Titan? Because it's like Titan's apparently not finished. I feel like the only person that would be able to finish it would be Hannah's dad / Joan's ex-husband. But I don't know. I'm curious will they kind of bring him back into the story or not. Or not, lest they themselves just end up finishing the whole thing by themselves. I don't know. We'll kind of have to see about that. But there, like I said, a lot went down in these 3 episodes, and I'm so curious to see what goes down going forward this season, see how all of this plays out. The whole Jennifer situation too, about whether her powers are going to kick in. I think given enough time they will, but we'll kind of have to see about that. Like I said, I feel like a big focus on this season 2 will be potentially Cole's mom, which he's yet to actually bring that conversation up that his mom is tied to this. Like when the symbol originally pops up, he never really mentioned his mom, even when they're like, oh, how did you know that story? It's like he didn't answer, but the fact, so maybe because Cole is kind of figuring things out. I don't know. Because I feel like if she was his mom, I feel like future asshole would have said, like, he would have had a bigger reaction towards meeting up with Jennifer. I don't know, because that's Cole, who's, like I said, that's probably, end of the season Cole, who's been through a lot, even more so than the Cole that's in front of, like, Jennifer now, so. I'm also interested to see what this whole Deacon situation comes out to be. Like, Deacon, I think, I don't know, we'll see. Like I see, I've caught bits of the previews that shown him there, but obviously if you haven't seen the previews, I won't say anything about it. So, but I'm very interested to see what Deacon's whole thing is. Like I said, is he good guy, bad guy, what his whole deal is going to end up being. And once again, the end all be all for this is, how do you break the cycles? When once again, it seems like at every freaking turn, everything is part of something. Like you think you're breaking, you're going outside of the cycle doing this, but it's like in actuality, you're just feeding into it. You know, it even had Olivia burning the word of the witness, which is interesting. Like she was looking at it and everything. And I guess that was her way of being like, oh, she knows what she needs to know now. And she no longer needs that to be her guideline. I mean, to be fair, she wasn't the one who wrote it in the first place anyway. It wasn't her words. Those were Ethan. So I don't know, just kind of interesting for her. It's like, oh, because there's certain, because I feel like this is the first time they've ever focused on it too. And I think it's a neat idea of gens, those being like the timeline, the cycles that can't be broken. They're the ones that's like, these are meant to happen and they will always happen, and kind of feed into themselves the whole Ouroboros situation, the snake eating itself. The whole point is trying to break those gens to save the world. Like I said, I'm very interested to see what goes down. Obviously, check back next week when I discuss the next 3 episodes. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good